and just looking at this discrepancy, because we looked at the other companies that declared a dividend tax even in the month of March, even though they paid it out after the deadline of 30 March, they did not withhold any dividend tax. So again, jury's out as to who is right and who is wrong.
I was quite interested what Zweli said right at the end there, with specifically about whether they were obliged to pay the 15% or not. All I can say is that I can see on our client accounts, the ones who hold Anglo anyhow, is that they've paid the tax already.
So what is your sense with regards to how this is actually going to play out?
Well, I wouldn't think that Anglo would get it wrong per se, but they'd rather probably pay the tax out than rather not. That's my sense of it. And I would think that they've got hundreds of legal people and accountants there who would be working on the matter and do it in the right, accordance of the law. Although, is it law yet? Isn't it just a budgetary proposal? So I think, you need to get maybe Ms. Whaley on the program specifically and have half an hour and beat it out.
Of course, we're breaking this news today, so I mean, this hitting the market, just to take a look to see how this is actually going to affect a lot of the people. Because again, I say that, and we're going to be speaking to Simon Brown in just a bit, where he's actually compared some of the companies that have declared dividends.
I think Sasol was the other one he compared.
Sasol was the other one, and we know that the likes of ELB and other companies declaring a dividend, prior to the 30 March deadline and paying it out, after the 1st of April, and still not declaring this dividend withholding tax. They didn't withhold any dividend tax. So again, you just look at who should have paid and who shouldn't have. And
it's extraordinary that we're even talking about it. You would think that companies' legal teams would have, got this right first time.
I suppose investors might just feel slightly cheated on that front.
Investors always feel cheated.
Okay, so Anglo American is down around 1% today. We've got the overall resource space actually coming under significant pressure, Sasha. So what is your sense on this?
Yeah, I think maybe the ECB commentary from Mario Draghi specifically, no more LTRO. Maybe that was the moment when commodities specifically sold off. And that would have impacted the underlying, specifically the resource companies listed in London, Anglo and BHP Billiton specifically. I mean, that's what he said basically, no more LTRO for the time being. And they think things are improving slightly, even though some of the economic data is maybe telling us that it's not. Maybe they know something that we don't.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, ECB keeping rates unchanged, as you mentioned, and then the ECB also halting on in terms of bond purchases. We've got Spanish bond yields, which are rising significantly. This creating a bit of a concern. Despite this, we've actually got our own banking sector doing really well today. Massive gains coming through for financials.
Outperforming the rest of the markets, yeah.
So perhaps not that sensitive to some of the global banking worries.
Maybe there are institutional investors who are having a look at our banking environment, having a look at maybe there was 3-4 months ago, we were a little bit negative on economic growth, and even your guests beforehand were saying that maybe the growth forecasts were a little bit too low and maybe they're going to be slightly better. And in fact, in African Bank's trading update, was it yesterday, it looked a little bit better than anticipated, although in the middle of some people's ranges. So maybe it's not as bad as we think it is out there. Maybe also housing prices starting to rise and people's asset base is feeling a little bit better about the future. So, and that bodes well, I guess, for the local banking sector. Although you can argue that they look a little bit overpriced, but relative to what? Are they uglier compared to European banks, for instance? No, they're in much better shape and they're servicing a faster growing market. So maybe they deserve to trade at a slight premium.
I know that you're an African bank and that is your banking play. Any other banks that you'd be looking at?
No, actually no. Our view is that, legislation and capital requirements will over time dampen returns. Yeah. For the big banks specifically, and the type of banking activities where they really made a lot of money, they're all winding that back in because they have to.
So let's also just touch on what we've been seeing coming through within the industrial sector relative to the resource space. Sasha, again, this is massive play between resources versus industrials, because industrials have actually pushed us much higher, and everyone's asking the question as to how long this is going to last, and whether resources could actually come under more pressure because we're not going to see the growth materializing in the East.
I think it's all relative. I think your lunchtime guest put it in perspective, where he said something like the base in China had grown so enormously, so who cares whether it's 7.8 or 8.2%? Who actually cares? I think you're starting to see a bottoming in copper inventories, so you might even see a copper squeeze at some stage, which would bode well for both Anglos and BHP Billiton. Our preferred play is Billiton, simply because of the quality of the assets that they possess, and they would be able then to put some projects on hold if needs be. I've heard that they might be looking at scaling back a couple of projects, including the key one, Olympic Dam. They might be looking at scaling that back if needs be. And in that, you would get a more smoothed earnings. And that's what they've, over time, continually told shareholders. You've got much smoother earnings relative to their peers. Although commodity earnings, as you know, are always going to be relatively choppy.
Absolutely. And thank you so very much, Sasha. We have to leave it there with you. Thanks so much for your time.